Triads are not a unit I've tried out much since the mass changes, but in theory they should be better than they used to be. Very interesting unit for the Skaven. Glorious Feeder here has taken a few of them up against Boris as the Empire. He's led by Ikit Claw here, so although it's a bit of a, not totally, but a bit of a Scryer themed build here with the Teeth Breakers. We've got one unit of Warp Grinders, some Warp Fire Throwers, so definitely in for a fun time. And Ikit, of course, leading the way. We do have a handful of Eshin Triads on loan from Clan Eshin, of course. Ixcha's Triads as well, the Regiment of Renown with their Doppelganger Summon. Very cool and fun ability, and quite good as well if you use it in the right way, in the right situation. What have we got on the Empire side? Like I said, Boris. We've got rockets firing up and over the hill, just going to be a problem. Knights of the Blazing Sun, couple of Pistoliers. I think there's 3 Knights of the Blazing Sun scattered around in total. A whole bunch of Sigmar's Sons, Spearmen with Shields, a Free Company Militia, yeah. Regular old state troops. An interesting deployment. I wonder if he was anticipating maybe some Clan Eshin Triads like in the corner there. But, yeah. Regardless, Triads, what do they bring you? So they've got Concealment Bombs, of course, as many Clan Eshin units do. They're low model count, low HP, low armor, a decent melee defense, although for a halberd type unit, which is really what they are with anti-large AP, really not that great. They do have charge defense against large, vanguard deployment, strider, and stalk, so on just about any terrain they'll perform pretty reliably, but Weeping Blade as well. 50% armor can be insanely strong. Weeping Blade, the only armor, a percentage-based rather, armor debuff in the game, and a lot of the Clan Eshin units have access to it. It's not like you need the Triads for it, but the fact they also do anti-large AP means that in supporting engagements against large armored type units, they are exceptionally strong. And of course the Empire has like cavalry and griffins, not a ton of large armored units you might think, but exactly, I mean, cavalry and the griffins fall exactly into that, right? And actually I would say probably even more so than monsters, the Triads are best at supporting regular Skaven chaff against cavalry. If you think about the cost as well, they're what, 750 points, which is more expensive even than Empire Halberdiers. They're more of a specialist type unit. Like they will, not really meant to hold like a frontline engagement, right, with that low model count. As these two players exchange some artillery fire, the catapult's doing some pretty decent damage, the rocket's also doing some decent damage. This is the decoy, and you can see how it's kind of pushed these Pistoliers away. Great use of that to protect the artillery and kind of more vulnerable parts of this army here. The biggest issue with Triads has always been their squishiness and their small footprint. Again, they can't really pin units in that well because of their low model count and small footprint. Makes them not as good against monster type units. But again, I haven't really tried them out much since the mass changes, so I'm curious to see how they do here. Like in this type of a situation where you've got the Skaven Slave to potentially take the charge and help provide some extra model saturation so that the Triads are not taking all of the hits, they can get in there and do some serious work. But eventually the Empire is going to come forward as they are sort of losing the artillery fight to a degree. Nice Howling Warp Gale here. Unfortunately, the Teeth Breakers are not in a perfect position to immediately open up, but they are going to get a firing order there and start to make Boris feel some pain. They themselves have definitely felt some pain. Oh yeah. Damage is not too incredible as Boris isn't too close, and the Rattling Guns really, I mean, the closer you are, the better. Likewise, Warp Fire Throwers struggling to actually fire, although there they absolutely melt one unit of Swordsmen, which is great. Here again, just like I described, I'm missing it, but the Skaven Slaves, they take the charge, and then Knights of the Blazing Sun retreat. They're not getting too many hits from the Triads, but the Triads do have some more bodies to potentially soak here. Over on the other side, Pistoliers getting into the artillery, but Warp Grinders are another unit. Warp Grinders and Triads go together like bread and butter, I'll tell you what. They are just meant to be together, and locking these Knights of the Blazing Sun down with the Warp Grinders, the Skaven Slave Spears, or Clan Rat Spears even, which they themselves also benefit, right, from the armor sundering. You can see those Knights of Blazing Sun down to 50 armor from that Weeping Blade while it's active. The biggest thing, again, as Halberd infantry, although they are quite fast, faster than a lot of other Halberd type infantry at 48 speed, even with strength and numbers active, they will still generally get outran by non-poisoned heavy cavalry. Blessed with Filth is another way, though, to kind of support them. Not a super common spell from Lore of Plague. Generally, you just see summons and other things. But Ixchis Triads coming down here, getting the Pistoliers. A little bit of mismicro from the Empire player, letting them get caught up. That is a shameful display. Here, the Knights of the Blazing Sun. I don't think they actually have a charge order directly on the Triads, because they don't do much damage on the charge. It kind of seems like they mostly get caught up here. And, in fact, will take a significant amount of damage. They do not have magic attacks. They do have flaming attacks, but magic damage like Grail Knights charging into Triads is a bad time for the Triads. Knights of the Blazing Sun, very high charge bonus, definitely still hurts. But in a situation like this where they didn't really get a good charge, the Triads trade super cost effectively. Meanwhile, Boris is chasing Ikit. This is actually a good situation for Ikit because his missile attacks are likely to shoot Boris, and that is probably what Glorious Feeder wants here more than anything, is for Ikit's shooting attacks to actually hit Boris. Like right now, he's kind of getting distracted with all these infantry units. But guys may have seen replays of mine in the past where like I managed to zap Ilariel. Ikit Claw, sometimes I joke, is the best missile cav in the game because he actually does a hilarious amount of missile damage. But Burning Head here, and more Knights of Blazing Sun getting dragged down by a combination of Clan Rats and Triads. And again here, the same thing. Skaven Slaves saturate, allow for the Triads to get in here and finish off, and just the massive bodies here. This is really what Skaven's all about, right? Dragging you down with numbers and numbers. And the Triads, again, they're not meant to operate independently whatsoever. You almost always want to have them, and this is generally true of all units, but especially with some units like Triads, they cannot operate independently for the most part. You really need them saturated in with other units, almost like Monstrous Infantry in a similar way. How Monstrous Infantry really don't fight that well alone. It's better to have them like on top of a unit of regular infantry. In a similar vein, Triads here, even supporting each other, just rip the last of those Knights of the Blazing Sun apart. Isn't going to end up mattering, though, as a lot of the Skaven army is starting to crumble. The rockets have used up the last of their ammunition. They've been able to generate great value, and the Pistoliers as well, doing a great job chasing routing units. Got to point that out, of course. But it is still pretty close. There's still quite a bit of Triads here. They're going to pop concealment bombs so they can't get too closely spotted, and even trading against Empire State troops, like the physical resistance helps quite a bit in that situation. Low model count, and they're not going to trade very cost effective, but it's not as terrible as it might seem. Oof, Ikit doing a little bit of brutal friendly fire there as he just rolls through on his Doom Wheel. Best Doom Wheel in the game. Brass Orb going to be popped here. He's in a very dangerous situation. No, the Brass Orb actually cancels. It was Warp Lightning. Okay. Decided to cast the Warp Lightning instead. Finally, he has an opportunity to get Boris where he wants him. Use the Brass Orb to keep those Spearmen tied up, and now the Triads can really shine. Or get charged by Knights of Blazing Sun. And let's check. We'll keep the health bars up to see the damage on that, given that they for sure had a charge order, more or less got a clean charge, and the Triads are suffering pretty badly. I mean, the both of units are kind of butchering each other, to be honest. It's a very bloody trade on both sides, but generally Knights of Blazing Sun here, in order to protect Boris, that's a worthy sacrifice for them. There are some more Triads over here, but Fireball up on the high ground, and plenty of Empire troops rallying to the cause kind of across the field here. Not too many Skaven left. Howling Warp Gale does lock Boris in place even while he's on the ground, but the Ixchis Triads unfortunately get terrified. Regular Triads are in here to keep fighting, and they have actually almost routed Boris, and even in fact do rout Boris with the help of Ikit Claw. So perhaps if they can chase Boris off here, especially using the missile attack of Ikit to keep doing damage to Boris, potentially Skaven could come back in this game, but a Fireball here forces Ikit to try and dodge, and that allows Boris to actually come back from rout, which is a super unfortunate situation. All of a sudden, Ikit himself is going to want to rout, and even does rout just from the presence of Boris being nearby. You know, he also has those other buffs, and just leadership losses leads to army losses. So there you go. An unfortunate, ignominious end for Ikit Claw, and that's 2 days in a row now where I've featured a unit on the losing side. But, I mean, credit to the Triads. They did their part, all of them trading well above their own value. You know, some of these other parts of the army, like the catapults, initially seemed like they were doing good damage, but it is in fact mostly just cheap state troops. The pit fighters of Hell's Deep, I didn't even talk about them because they mostly just got wrecked. But and like the weapons teams actually do reasonably well. Rattling guns not quite what you would want from them. Clan rats also don't trade super cost effective into state troops, which is why I tend not to even bring them probably here. Maybe a few clan rat spears, but I don't know about the shields. Ikit, getting an insane amount of value as well, did a great job. And honestly, it was closer than it looked on the balance of power in the end there. Had Boris gotten finished off, that would have been end game for Empire for sure. But yeah, generally state troops all trade very cost effective. Free company militias just kind of here. Knights of Blazing Sun are fairly limited. Only one of them ends up paying for themselves, which is credit to the Triads here. Pistoliers, of course, though, I mean, easy to pay for themselves at 500 points, and generally do a great job. The Rockets also using up all their ammo and still barely paying for themselves. I mean, that's kind of the nature of the situation, firing at a giant horde of chaff over a long period of time where they kind of spread out and disintegrate. But anyway, yeah, it was a genuinely fun battle and enjoyable, so big thanks to Glorious Feeder for that one. As for Triads, we kind of talk about them in the context of mid-tier halberds. Again, their kind of specialist traits makes it hard to compare them directly. 950 for the Regiment Renown, 750 for the regular Eshin Triads here. When you think about units that are in a similar cost bracket, I mean, none of them really have the same type of role. You've got, like, Sora Spears that are a full-on frontline infantry unit, so those are very different. Not really a good comparison to make there. I mean, like, the human halberds are just so much cheaper now that it's not, and also, again, frontline units, not really much of a comparison. Slayers is an interesting one. Slayers are more expensive, but they're similar in that they're kind of low armor, anti-large units, although Slayers, again, more unit models, 6 more unit models, 2,000 more HP. They've got the magic resistance as well, literally 0 armor, but better stats as well. They're more expensive, of course, and Unbreakable is huge, but it kind of makes the comparisons a little bit awkward, right? There's just not really anything. I stopped short of calling them necessarily a full-on unique unit, because, I mean, they are kind of like Death Runners, and, you know, there is one other low model count halberd unit, I guess, but it is in a completely different price bracket, which is Depth Guard Polearms. Only 45 models on these guys, so the Triads at least have an 11 model count advantage over them. But again, it's kind of like hard to compare these guys because they're drastically different cost tiers. And yeah, I mean, you've got like all the regeneration stuff going on here with the undead and them being functionally more or less unbreakable. Just way better stats overall. Yeah, there's not really a great direct one-to-one comparison. So I guess just even within the Skaven roster, you can compare them to Death Runners, which are kind of the anti-infantry variant, right? Death Runners are more expensive, better charge bonus, plus 12 charge, plus 2 melee attack. Their weapon strength, I'd imagine the anti-large versus anti-infantry profile is the same. Yeah, 15 and only 10 actually, so interesting. And they don't have the charge defense against large. So in many ways, the Triads do offer some benefits over Death Runners. Obviously, if you're expecting a faction that has armored large instead of armored infantry, Triads are the way to go. Death Runners, you expect armored infantry, can be the way to go in that situation. So a lot of rambling today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.